So our download has completed and we are ready now to proceed with the installation for MySQL. So we're just going to double click our installer utility here, and we're going to see in this case an update products screen come up. Now we have already installed some MySQL utilities on this particular system before. So this is why we're seeing an update products. If you haven't ever installed anything for MySQL, then chances are you'll probably just see a welcome screen and you can just proceed like any other installation. But in this case, there was a previous installation. It was removed. So that's why we're seeing an update products. But it doesn't matter either way. We can still do the install. So from here, we're seeing an option to install some updates if there is anything that needs to be updated. So we can check that if we want to. We can remove MySQL products. But in this case, what we're going to do is add or modify product features. Now, even if you haven't ever installed anything MySQL and for some reason you are seeing the update product screen, then you can still just do an installation through the add modify products. So we can just go with this option here, and you see you get the options to simply choose which components you want. So there is the MySQL server option right there. So we can choose our architecture. You see here, there's 32 or 64. So we're going to go with 64, of course, and this just tells you what is included with that. So those are the core database components. There are applications available here: Workbench, Notifier, connectors for Excel and Visual Studio. So obviously you can choose whichever you need to, whatever you need to install. Various connectors that can be added here, and again, this may vary depending on what's installed locally on your machine. And then there's documentation as well. So it doesn't hurt to install everything. So let's go ahead and just choose all of those pretty much in their default states. And we're going to choose next. And this is just telling us the requirements that have to be met before the installation can proceed. So all the prerequisites have our nice happy green check marks. So we're good there. Next. And those are the products that will be installed. So again, this is simply what we've chosen. The Workbench you see here actually does have to be downloaded. It wasn't included in the original download, so that's fine. So we can execute on those. And we'll let that go. Now the download might take, maybe a minute or two, but the other products, the installation for those really should not take very long at all. In some cases, maybe 10 to 30 seconds, depending on obviously on which options you've chosen. But the installation for MySQL itself is very fast. It's very light, very efficient. So we'll just let this download proceed here and check back very shortly. So the download just completed for the Workbench, so that you see has succeeded. So it's now installing the components. So we'll see how rapidly this actually does install. You see the actual server component has already completed its installation. So again, very, very fast, very efficient installation process for MySQL. So we'll just continue to let these. You can see how fast these are going now here. And there we go. So the complete installation has all been successfully done. So we can hit show details here if you want to, and it just tells you what was going on, but we don't really need anything there. We can just click on next. And there's an initial configuration that has to be done here, but we can just click on next again. And what you see here are the server configuration type options. So you see the configuration type drop down here. It says development machine. We can go with a server machine or a dedicated machine. And in this case, it just gives you little descriptions about which each one is for. So you see for development machine, and many other applications will be installed on this, and a minimal amount of memory used for MySQL. So it's geared more toward the development environment. Server machine, applications will be running, but choose this option for web or application servers. MySQL will have a medium amount of memory usage, and a dedicated machine is the third option, wherein, in essence, this is our database server. No other server, such as a web server, will be run, and MySQL will make use of all available memory. So obviously you just pick and choose what's suitable to you. But if you're looking to host a fairly robust database and have your applications running on front-end systems that are connecting back into the database, then you definitely want the dedicated machine environment. If you're doing this just for testing, maybe for your developers, then certainly you would want to go with a development machine. So in this case, it doesn't really matter because we're just doing some basic testing. So we're just going to go with the dedicated machine option. Okay, as far as networking, we're not going to change anything with respect to the ports, but do take note there, you see port 3306. So we'll have it open a firewall for that as well. And there are some advanced configuration options, but we'll be seeing those later on. So we don't really need to do that now. So we're just going to hit next. And it does require a password. So you have to set one here for the root account. So this is always required. So we'll just put in a fairly standard password here. Okay. Tells you what your strength is. Now, ideally, in a production environment, you would want a good, strong password. And then the other thing that we can do instead of using a root account is to create another user. So you can see MySQL user accounts. We can add a user in here. So we'll create an account. Okay. And the role is DB admin. So you see there's an option here to select all kinds of different levels. But in this case, since we're just getting started, we're going to make ourselves a DB admin and put in the same password. Okay. And we can click on next. And then there is always a service that runs in Windows to support the MySQL server. And this is just the service name. It gives it by default. You can leave it as that. The 5.6 here is indicative of the version. So you can obviously change that to anything if you want to. MySQL service. It doesn't really matter what the name of it is as long as you recognize what that's for. And generally, you want to run that as a standard system account. Recommended for most scenarios. System accounts can't be used by users to actually log into the system. So it's generally preferred to use a standard system account, but you can choose a custom user account if you want to, if there's any kind of particular configuration that you need for the purposes of your database. So we're just going to go with fairly default options here. Next on that, and it's just doing our initial configuration. It's going to install some samples and examples as well. You see a notification just popped up that we got a new service added to the list, and that again was just for the Windows services. So that's just about our final step here. It's going to complete the initial configuration for the samples, and you can see our next option is complete, and that is our installation done. So we've got our configuring product happening here. So we will basically get started with some actual demonstrations of administering and using the product coming up shortly. There we go. Our service is complete, and we'll see the workbench in future videos.